What's going on, y'all? Tonight, what we are going to talk about is what does it mean to fear the Lord? And what does it mean to be as little children in order to enter into the kingdom of heaven? This is important for me because these were two of the concepts that I could not wrap my head around when I was a kid growing up. And I was raised more or less in a completely secular fashion. My brother and I went to catechism school to prepare for First Communion, took First Communion, but never got confirmed in the Catholic Church. The closest thing to a religion that I was really raised in was something called, or is something called, Self-Realization Fellowship, founded by Paramahansa Yogananda. And these concepts, what I believe are the real meanings, which we're going to dive into, of these concepts, fear of the Lord and being as little children, right? One of those is very prominently in the New Testament and also throughout all of Scripture. The other we see most explicitly in the New Testament, in the Gospels. But there are some references in the Old Testament, or a lot, at the very least, of emphasis, much emphasis placed on the father, son, or daughter, as it were, nature, the parental relationship between us and God, that we are his children. But let's make a little bit more sense of this. I would try to get people to explain to me, what does this mean? Not in a way that's like, hey, prove these stupid concepts. You bet you can't. But like, hey, I really want to understand this. I am blocked. I feel blocked from being able to continue studying in this way, or to be able to buy in, because I can't wrap my head around these concepts. And nobody could explain. Those were just a few of the many concepts that I was seeking to understand, that nobody that I could find could explain to me. Original sin, another one. Jesus being the Son of God, another one, etc. And that's what has led me, among other things, down this current path where I am literally quoting and talking about Scripture. You know what? It's what's interesting to me right now, and that is how I have always lived my life. If it's interesting to me, all in. We're figuring it out. So I want to share what I've learned, because this has really blown a lot of doors off of my brain in terms of being like, I get it more now. Now I have more understanding. Now I can buy in more. Now even more things will make sense to me. And this is, I think it's very important, because if you have the more holistic of an understanding you have about a concept, the more breadth and depth with which you can grasp its essence. A friend of mine, a really accomplished martial artist, described being a black belt as something that has less to do with technical proficiency, being able to, go down a checklist and say, yep, can do this, can do this, can do this, and more about signaling that a black belt is bestowed upon somebody who has absorbed the very essence of the craft. And I believe very deeply that understanding, developing, or pushing through and seeking to find a more complete understanding of these concepts, most especially the fear of the Lord, but the way that ties into, as I see it, the being as little children, understanding both of these concepts individually and then how they pair together, makes all other study of Scripture or of commentary, whatever religion or faith you are exploring, because I am not set on any one of them yet, though I am actively investigating a few. It applies to all faiths. So, without further ado, let's dig into the fear of the Lord. Okay. One reason why I did not like this is because, why do I need to be afraid of you? Why should the first thing that I think of is fear? Why should I just I don't want to live my life and commit my soul to being in a fearful state and doing things out of fear. Nothing about that. It seemed so antithetical to my life and my nature for me to accept that. And that was, like I've mentioned or alluded to, a big blocker for me to buy in to exploring more of my relationship with God than I already knew that I had. Because that's one thing that I have never lacked, thank God. The knowledge the experiential knowledge that that connection existed, which was initially why I was so resistant in the first place to even explore learning about faith. Because I was like, I already got the thing. Like, we're good. What's the point? Why do I need an intermediary? All this stuff. Well, little did I know. That's like I can become a great singer on my own in my apartment, like practice room, a teacher, getting around other amazing singers who are your contemporaries or who you look up to and learn from, or people who are to your left on the path, etc. It's like, well, dude, yeah, you're all singers. All you're doing is opening your mouth and closing your folds and sending some air through it. But is it possible that maybe they have learned some stuff that you haven't? I wasn't connecting dots that way in my earlier years. Thank God. My brain is now fully formed. It's good to be 33 and not 19. So what is fear of the Lord then? Because it seems like it's pretty important, right? If we look at the very end of Ecclesiastes, what do we hear? Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For the next, I'll read it since I started it. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Okay, so that's it. We have to fear God. That's the whole point of everything, and we have to do what he says. Now, how can we do that in a way where we don't feel like we are slaves? And interestingly, that concept that we are slaves is something that's talked about in lots of various commentary from multiple traditions of faith, which is like you are actually a slave to your body, to your lower self, to its impulses. And seemingly paradoxically, by following these commandments, these instructions, you find your freedom. Well, that makes a lot of sense because the more that I have implemented it in the 9 years since I've first came across it, the more it rings true to me that discipline, in fact, equals freedom. And the more that I look at my own life, and as I integrate what I'm learning into how I've been living and how I feel tempted to live, one of the biggest things that becomes clear to me is that giving yourself too many options in any area of life, too many options, really causes paralysis or analysis paralysis, which, if nothing else, because we are so paralyzed, keeps us from action, and we have to have action. So what is this working understanding of the fear of the Lord that works? Because really, it's about first principles. Let's get to first principles understanding so that we can understand everything else, so that we can truly absorb its essence. Well, I believe that it is not that type of fear that we typically associate with that word. It is more so that fear means the capacity to recognize awesome things and to have wonder, which is a spirit or a state of being that you enter into when some input triggers it. A state of wonder, a state of awe. Why would that be important? Why would that be important for, as King Solomon said, that's the whole duty of man, to be in this state of openness to wonder and awesomeness from various inputs and keep God's commandments. Well, do you believe in miracles? Because if you do, that is evidence that you have that fear of the Lord. Maybe you're not attuned to the smallest of miracles that would require the most sensitive attunement of your instrument. But maybe the miracles that you say that you believe in were so huge, so overwhelming, say a Red Sea parting, a man walking on water, somebody being healed of some illness that was previously incurable, something amazing happening in your own life that just would be impossible to describe, blasphemous perhaps to describe as anything other than a miracle. That's evidence that you have that capacity. So if you have that capacity, how do you strengthen it? And this is where we get to the importance or the meaning behind the as little children. So, like I said, we see this in the Gospels. I'll just pick one of them. Let's go Matthew Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So what is a child? I'm not a parent yet, hopefully, God willing, knock on wood. But I have been a child, and I've been around them, and they are curious, they are joyful, they are enthusiastic, they look with wonder and awe at things. They seek to please and to do good. So perhaps we can strengthen this capacity by becoming more like little children. Okay, well, how do we do that? I need to go play in the sandbox. I need to go to the jungle gym, the bouncy castle. As you can tell, I don't have kids because I don't spend that much time with them because I have no idea what they do. Watch Dora the Explorer, whatever her name is, or whatever is popular on, I don't know. Sit in front of my iPad? Probably not. But have you ever heard of inner child work? So in addition to this increasingly, this rapidly accelerating journey of seeking, one of the other things that I have spent a tremendous amount of effort and energy and resources on in the past few years has been mental health, quote unquote, healing. And a modality or a method that has proven to be extremely impactful has been healing of the inner child, which essentially means that you, through varying processes, go back to the version of you who was unblemished and who the world had never told no to and who had not taken any of the world's brutality yet. And you go find that version of you within yourself, and you assure them that this adult version of you has got it all under control, that it's going to be okay. Because somewhere shortly after that avatar that you land on, something happens to you. You pick up some story, you pick up some belief, some whatever about yourself that changes forever how you experience yourself and the world around you. But when you go heal this inner child, then the chains of that bondage in your current adult life, you are released from them. So you have been carrying these stories, these behaviors, these habits, these beliefs your entire life since that point. And they ripple out and they show up in various different ways, big and small, constant or surprising. But nevertheless, one of the downstream effects of that is that it blocks off your ability to have that spirit of wonder and awe, to be like a healed little child, to have the fear of the Lord. When I was thinking about this yet again a couple of days ago, I was like, yeah, one of the other things that I did that was in that vein of healing of the inner child, although not an expressly therapeutic method, or rather it was not therapy, but its effects were, among other things, very therapeutic, was clown work, the study of clown, an acting technique. And I have studied this. When I was thinking about this, I realized, oh, wow, it's been exactly a year that I started studying clown. I did 2 weekend workshops, a week-long intensive, and a 3-week in-person workshop. So a decent amount of time studying clown. And the clown teacher who I work with, in his book, which is what he teaches in person, there is great emphasis placed on finding this, as he refers to it, little one as your adult self and taking them with you wherever you go. This is an acting technique. So the focus is on bringing this little one into the rehearsal room and into your process and then onto the stage with you in performance. But really, in order to do that, you have to adopt that as a way of being. And what happens in Pandemonium's clown training is there first has to be a shedding of this shell, a breaking away of, it's like, chipping out a exterior of some rock or something until it all falls away, of this tightly wound, too serious, unhealed inner child, adult self. We've lost touch with that inner child state. And so here's where I want to bring together most important point that we see all throughout all scripture, all throughout all commentary from various different beliefs and faiths, which is that when you are approaching God, when you are praying, when you are doing when you are following any of the instructions that have been given you, you have to do so earnestly. You have to do so with a true passion, a true zeal, enthusiasm, wonder, awe. You see where I'm going with this. Now, in Clown, once that exterior has been stripped away, one of the things that Chris, this is the teacher, founder of Pandemonium, magnificent healer, this man is, he talks about the poetic body. And in my experience, what I realized was the poetic body is a state of being. It's a state that you get yourself into. And you can get yourself into various states. You know, for example, if I'm sitting with my shoulders slumped over and I have bad posture and I'm speaking off my voice and I'm on vocal fry, my state is going to be lowered. I'm going to feel like I have less energy. I'm going to feel less assertive. I'm going to feel like less is possible for me. Whereas if I simply do the opposite of that, if I have good posture and I speak on the voice with high vocal energy, I notice my state changes immediately. And so the removal of that exterior, what's underneath that is this soft, squishy inside. It's the poetic body. And what I noticed is that, you know, the poetic body, that's where the laughter comes from. It's where it's able to erupt from. It's where the screaming erupts from. It's where emotion erupts from. It's where, as Chris is fond of saying, the wham wham muscles are right next to the ha ha muscles, right? So that's where crying comes from, the ability to be open to state changes or to new feelings based on the inputs. So the poetic body, getting to that state, I noticed when I was, because I have been praying, asking for things my entire life. I noticed that the poetic body, after I had found that in the frame of clown class, felt an awful lot like when I was really focused and very intentional in whatever I'm praying and asking for, and whatever I'm seeking and knocking and asking for. That's interesting. So if we can get into our poetic bodies and have access to them, that means that we are more like little children, which means that we have the proper fear of the Lord. And finally, the best part about removing that exterior and getting to that poetic body, what's required along that process is that you shed all fear, or maybe not shed all fear, but you develop such courage to just show up front and center, under the lights, on stage, and absolutely flop. You just bomb. What you are doing is terrible. It's a rite of passage in all clown schools. Now, how you treat that individual in those moments, that differs clown school to clown school. I very much like Chris's approach because it's good. What you have to go through to get there frees you from fear of judgment, or gives you such courage that you're willing to just go do it. And if you fail, you fail. And if people don't laugh, and they don't laugh. And if they laugh, great. Because the impetus behind that is that you have something that you need to share. You're so excited to share with the audience. Well, what that means for us in this context, following the instructions, how can this help us follow the instructions more? What it means is that allows us to fulfill the purpose, our own individual, unique purpose that we have been created for, with full zeal. I like this word zeal lately. Full zeal, full conviction, full courage, no shame, because a child doesn't have shame. They're just excited to come and show you what they've made. It's pure. And so when you have all of those things, you can fear God and keep his commandments, for that's the whole duty of man. And you are also thus more empowered to not only receive the messages that are going to instruct you on what it is that you are supposed to, you uniquely are supposed to go and do to fulfill the purpose that only you can, but it also means that you will go forth and take action on those instructions with no holds barred, and that you are even more prepared for the hardships that are going to test you along the way. And this is ultimately what we help you to do at the Speak Boldly method. We just help this to happen on a shorter timeline, and in that timeline, make sure that you are most readily equipped with the right tools for fulfilling your purpose. We help you find and unleash your voice, literally and figuratively. So if I can be of help to you in any way, reach out to me at Michael Hewitt23, all social media platforms. Drop me a comment. I respond to them all, look at them all. Write me. Let me know how I can help. Or let me know if you got a totally different interpretation of this, or if you think that I am just out of my tree. If I may quote Ben Affleck from Good Will Hunting, out of his tree, just out of his gourd. Good scene. And also, let me know if you also love the movie Good Will Hunting. All right, y'all. I'm getting out of here. Go forth and speak boldly.